Smoke rose from the broken ground, flames still burned in places where ships had crashed. The sky was gray, full of ashes. Bodies of both humans and aliens lay scattered, silent and still. It was a place of death. And no one came back for the dead. Among the wreckage, something moved just a little. A hand twitched. Fingers scratched at the ground. It was her, the alien warrior, once strong. Once feared, now broken, paralyzed from the waist down. Armor torn, her legs didn't move, her back was bleeding, and her eyes were full of pain. She tried to scream, but no voice came out. Her mouth was dry, throat full of dust. Her own people had left her behind. They saw her fall during the last blast, but they ran. They didn't stop to help, didn't even look back. She remembered her commander shouting, "Retreat." And then, silence. The ship took off, and she was still on the ground. Now, the battlefield was quiet, too quiet. She tried to reach her device, but it was smashed. She tried to move, but her spine wouldn't let her. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from anger. She was a warrior, proud and deadly. And now she couldn't move her legs. She cursed the war, cursed her own kind, cursed herself for being weak. A shadow passed nearby. She froze, eyes wide. Something was moving among the dead. She held her breath, afraid it was a scavenger or a wild beast. But then she saw boots, human boots. The figure stepped through the smoke. A man holding a cracked rifle. Walking with a limp, blood ran down his arm. His armor was dented. He looked tired, almost dead himself. But he moved with caution, eyes sharp. He stepped over the bodies, checking one by one. He didn't see her at first. She was half buried under rubble. But then her fingers moved again, weak and shaking. He stopped, pointed his rifle at her. She didn't flinch. What was the point? Their eyes met. For a long second, no one moved. Then she whispered, "Do it." Her voice was rough, broken. "Kill me." The human frowned, lowered his weapon. He stepped closer and knelt beside her. "You're still alive," he said, shocked. She looked away, not for long. He reached out and moved some of the rubble off her body. Her armor was cracked, and her legs were twisted at a strange angle. He looked around. No medics, no help, only the wind and the dead. "Your people left you?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Can you move your arms?" She nodded weakly. "Then you're not done yet," he said. She turned to him, surprised. "You're human." She said, "We're enemies." He shrugged. "Not right now, we're not." She blinked, not understanding. "Why?" she asked, voice shaking. "Why, help me." He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind." Suddenly, a sound came from the distance. A group of wild scavenger beasts began sniffing around the edge of the battlefield. They fed on the dead and sometimes the dying. She panicked, eyes wide. "If they find us, we're dead," she said. The human stood up, looked at her body, then at the beasts. He didn't have a vehicle, no comms, no backup, only one choice. He leaned down, slipped his arms under her, and slowly lifted her off the ground. She gasped, her body screamed in pain, but he didn't stop. He gritted his teeth, held her tight. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I've got you." She couldn't believe it. No one, not even her own soldiers, had done this. But a human, her enemy, was carrying her like she mattered. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from something else. Hope, maybe. Behind them, the beasts growled and began to move. The soldier adjusted her weight on his back and started walking, one slow step at a time, into the toxic fog, toward danger, toward survival. Together, his arms were shaking, but he didn't stop. The alien warrior, taller than him, heavier, her armor hung over his back. Her breathing was slow, sometimes shallow. But she was still alive. Blood dripped from both of them as he walked over cracked metal and burning earth. Her body was limp from the waist down. Every bump, every step made her wince, but she didn't complain. She had already accepted death. Now she was being carried by the enemy. And it confused her. The human grunted. "Try not to move," she whispered. "You don't have to do this," he answered. "I know," and kept walking. Around them, smoke filled the air. Some fires still burned in crashed ships. The wind carried the smell of death and oil far behind. The beasts still searched the bodies, but hadn't noticed them yet. She tried to lift her head and asked, "Who are you?" He said, "Private Ethan Cole, Earth Army." "Why are you helping me, Ethan Cole?" He paused for a second. "Because someone once helped me when I was left behind." She looked down, thinking. Her name was Shari, Warrior Class 7. She had been trained to destroy humans, not speak to them. But now this human was her only chance to survive. His breath was getting louder, chest rising fast. "You're too heavy," he said with a dry laugh. "What do they feed you people?" She smiled for the first time. Weak, but real, strength, honor, and sometimes rocks. He reached a steep hill, full of broken weapons and armor. He had to climb it while holding her. His boots slipped, but he caught himself. She felt guilt. "Stab her heart. Leave me," she whispered. "You'll die like this." "No," he said firmly. "I'm not letting you die alone out here." They reached the top after a long struggle. There, they saw the wide wasteland ahead, gray and dead, but far, far in the distance was a small blinking light. "Is that a cum tower?" She asked. "Maybe," he said. "If we get there, maybe someone will hear us." Suddenly, a buzzing sound filled the air. His heart stopped. He ducked behind a fallen wall and hit her beneath him. 2 enemy drones flew past slowly, scanning the area. If they saw her a paralyzed soldier, they might kill her for being weak. If they saw him, they'd kill him without asking. He pressed her close, covering her face. "Don't breathe loud," he whispered. They both stayed still for almost 5 minutes. The drones passed, moving toward the other side of the field. He let out a sigh and looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded, eyes wide. "I hate drones," she said. "Same," he replied. And they both laughed quietly. Then his legs gave out. He fell to the ground, gasping for air. His injuries were catching up. She tried to reach his face, but her arms were shaking. "You need rest," she said. "I can't stop," he said, "if I rest. I won't get up again," but he stayed down for a few minutes. She looked at his wounds, one cut near the ribs, bleeding badly. Her fingers trembled, but she ripped a small piece of her armor cloth. With shaky hands, she pressed it against his wound. He flinched, then looked at her, surprised. "You're helping me now?" "You carried me," she whispered. "It's fair." He smiled weakly. "You're not so scary after all. And you're not so stupid." "For a human," she said. They rested there for a while, hiding under broken steel. The sky started turning. Darker. It would be night soon. And the night in this zone was worse than the day. Creatures came out, and the temperature dropped fast. "We need shelter," he said, forcing himself up again. He picked her up once more. Slower this time. She didn't fight it. She let him carry her. Her hands rested on his back. "You'll freeze," she said. "Not before I get you to safety," he replied. She had never known mercy from humans. Now she was seeing it with every painful step he took. No one else had touched her since the blast. No one had spoken to her with care. In that moment, something shifted. She no longer saw him as just human. He was something else, a protector, a fighter, and strangely, a friend. They moved toward the cum tower in the distance. One broken step at a time, surrounded by smoke, hunted by enemies, but still moving, still alive, together. The sun disappeared behind dark clouds. The wind became colder, and dust began to rise from the broken ground. Ethan pulled a torn piece of cloth over his mouth. Shari leaned her head against his back. Eyes half closed, the fog was rolling in thick. Gray and choking, it covered the wreckage, swallowed sounds, and blurred everything. It was called the ghost layer by locals because many entered it. But few ever came out. Ethan kept walking, one shaky step at a time. His boots slipped often. His legs hurt more with every move. Shari whispered, "You should rest," but he shook his head. "If I stop, we freeze here." Their bodies were covered in sweat and blood. Every breath in the fog burned his throat. Shari tried to stay awake, but her mind kept drifting. She began talking softly words from her native tongue. Ethan didn't understand, but her voice calmed him. "What are you saying?" he asked. She smiled weakly. "Stories. From my homeworld, tell me in your best human," he joked. She closed her eyes and spoke. "Slowly, I had a sister," she said. "She was small and curious. We used to watch the sky and guess which star had life." Ethan smiled. "I used to do that too." Shari nodded. "She died." In a training accident, Ethan's steps slowed. "I'm sorry. She was better than me," Shari whispered. "She didn't deserve to go." "I lost my brother in the same way," he replied. "We all lose someone," she said. "War eats everyone." Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the fog. Like metal dragging against stone, both of them froze. Ethan lowered her to the ground gently and raised his rifle. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Shari held her breath. The sound came again closer now. Something was moving nearby, just out of sight. Not a drone. Not a soldier, something else. A growl echoed. Low and deep, Ethan crouched behind a broken pipe, hiding her with his body. From the mist, two glowing eyes appeared. The creature was huge, taller than a man, covered in black fur and armored scales. Its nose twitched, sniffing the air. Shari whispered, "It's a war scavenger. It feeds on the dying." Ethan cursed under his breath. He had only 3 bullets left. He knew he couldn't kill it not with what he had. So he stayed still, hoping it would pass. The beast moved closer. Its claws scraped the metal, its breath fogged the air. Shari's hand touched Ethan's cold and shaking. "If it attacks, don't defend me," she whispered. "Just run." He looked at her, eyes hard. "I won't leave you," he said. The beast growled louder. Now, just a few feet away, it sniffed, turned, and suddenly roared. Ethan fired once, hitting its shoulder. It screamed and charged forward. He fired again. Then again both missed. He grabbed a metal pipe and stood in front of Shari, ready to fight. But just as the creature lunged, an explosion lit up the fog. A hidden mine from an old battle buried in the ground went off. The blast threw the beast backward, screaming in pain. It crawled away into the mist. Limping and bleeding, silence returned, broken only by Ethan's breathing. He dropped the pipe, fell to his knees. His arm was burned from the blast, but he was alive. Shari stared at him, shocked. "You didn't run," she said. "No," he replied. "And I won't." He picked her up again, even though his hands were shaking. She looked at his face, covered in sweat and dust. "You're insane," she whispered. "Maybe," he said. "But I'm your ride, so hang on." They continued walking, deeper into the fog. Shari rested her head on his shoulder. She had never trusted anyone like this, and now she was starting to believe in him. Hours passed, and the air grew colder. Then, through the fog, they saw a small shape, a tall, broken tower with a blinking red light. "The Cum Station," Ethan said, with a weak smile. They had made it this far, but danger wasn't over yet. The power was off, and wild sounds echoed all around. Shari whispered, "We need shelter before the next night wave." Ethan nodded. "Let's pray this place still has a roof." And so, they stepped into the dark structure. Two enemies now walking the same road, not just surviving, but trusting. The metal door of the old cum station creaked open. Ethan stepped inside slowly. Holding Shari tight, the room was dark, full of dust and broken machines. The walls were cracked, wires hung from the ceiling like vines. Ethan laid Shari down gently on a dusty table. She winced in pain, but nodded, better than the ground. He searched the room quickly. No power, no light, no food, just silence. And the cold wind blowing through the broken roof. "I'll look for something to start a fire," Ethan said. He found an old storage box and tore out some plastic and wires. Shari used her sharp nails to help him cut the wires. Together, they made a small fire in a metal bucket. The fire gave little heat, but enough to see their faces. Ethan's hands were shaking from cold and pain. Shari looked at his side and said, "You're bleeding again." He looked down. His ribs were red and soaked. Without waiting, she took her broken armor plate and cut it into strips. She used it to wrap his side. Her hands weak but careful. "You've done enough," Ethan said. Shari looked into his eyes. "No, I haven't," for a moment. They just sat in silence, watching the fire. Outside, the wind howled louder. Then, something answered. A deep roar shook the walls. It didn't sound like a wild beast or drone. It was something ancient, something unnatural. Shari's eyes went wide. "That's not a normal hunter." Ethan stood up and looked out the broken window. Far in the fog, a giant shadow moved. It was slow but massive, tall as a two-story building. Each step made the ground vibrate. "What is that thing?" Ethan whispered. Shari's voice was low. "My people call it the Hollow One. It hunts pain, fear, and heat," she said. "It eats living minds." Ethan's hand tightened around his rifle. "How do we kill it?" "You don't?" She said. "You run or hide if it sees you. You break inside." The sound came closer, claws dragging against stone. The fire crackled softly. Its light flickering on their faces. Shari whispered, "Put out the fire." "It sees heat." Ethan kicked dirt over the flame, and the room fell into darkness. Now they couldn't see. But neither could the Hollow One. They heard it outside sniffing, breathing, dragging something heavy. Ethan held his rifle tightly, finger on the trigger. Shari grabbed his arm and whispered, "If it comes in, shoot me first." "What?" He whispered back, shocked. "I've seen what it does," she said. "Better to die fast than be eaten slow." He shook his head. "No way. I'll protect you," he said, "even from that." The creature stopped right outside. They could hear it scratching the walls. Smelling the cracks, Shari's body was trembling. Not from cold, but from memory. She had seen the Hollow One once before. During a night raid, it had taken her. Squad one by one, their screams never stopped. Not even after death. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe loud. Then something dripped from the ceiling, thick and black. It landed on his shoulder. He looked up slowly. The thing was on the roof. It had climbed silently and was peering through the broken hole. Its face was like melted metal. No eyes, just a wide mouth with rows of teeth. Ethan's heart raced. He aimed his rifle, but Shari grabbed his arm. Shaking her head, suddenly, the tower made a loud clank sound. Something collapsed upstairs. The creature turned and leaped toward the noise. It was gone in seconds, chasing the sound deeper into the station. Now was their only chance. Ethan picked Shari up quickly and rushed toward a back hallway. "We need to go now," he whispered. She held onto him tightly, her fingers digging into his jacket. They moved through the back corridors, broken and full of debris. Each step was loud in the silence behind them. The creature roared again, louder. This time, it had found nothing upstairs, and it was angry. They reached a supply room, small, metal-lined, and sealed. Ethan slammed the door shut and locked it from inside. It was pitch black, but safe for now. Both of them sat against the cold wall. Breathing hard. "I hate this place," Ethan said, trying to laugh. Shari smiled. "Me too." Outside, the creature passed again, growling softly. It stayed nearby, hunting for them. But it couldn't see through the metal. Not tonight. They sat in the darkness, close, listening to each other's breath for the first time. Shari leaned her head on Ethan's chest without fear. "You didn't run," she whispered. "Never planned to," he replied. And in that cold, dark room, hunted by a monster from nightmares, a new bond grew, one stronger than war. Built from trust, pain, and something close to friendship. The next morning came without sunlight. Only pale gray skies and cold wind greeted them as they stepped out of the small metal room. Ethan's back ached and his arms felt heavy. He had barely slept, always listening for the creature that hunted. The night before, Shari looked worse, her skin pale, lips dry, and her voice weak. Still, she whispered, "We survived another night." Ethan gave a tired smile. Barely. They needed to move. They were still inside the old tower, but the lower part was useless, no power. No signal. The control deck was at the top. 6 floors above them. "We need to reach the top," Ethan said. Looking up a rusty stairwell, Shari stared at it and sighed. "And how do you plan to carry a paralyzed alien that far?" He looked at her, like always. Step by step, the climb began. Each stair creaked under their weight. Ethan had to carry her with one arm and hold the railing with the other. His boots slipped more than once, but he kept going. Shari tried to distract him with stories. She spoke of her homeworld, tall trees with silver leaves, rivers that glowed in the dark. She told him about how she used to fly fighter ships through meteor storms for training. "I crashed the first 3. She laughed softly. Ethan chuckled. "Remind me never to fly with you." At the 2nd floor, they stopped to rest. Ethan's legs were shaking, his breath shallow. He sat on the floor and leaned back against the wall. Shari touched his arm. "You're pushing too hard. If I stop too long, I might not get back up," he said, from the broken window nearby. They could see the wasteland outside. Ash covered the ground like snow in the distance. Flying drones searched for survivors, either to kill or capture. Shari whispered, "If they find us first, we're finished." "Then we beat them," Ethan said, picking her up again. Floor by floor, they climbed on the 4th level. Part of the stairs had collapsed. They had to cross a narrow metal beam hanging over an open shaft. Ethan looked down and shook his head. Shari said softly, "You don't have to do this." He tightened his grip on her. "Yes, I do. One careful step at a time." He crossed the beam. It bent under their weight. I groaned, loudly but held. When they made it across, Ethan sat down and laughed in relief. Shari looked at him. "You're insane." He nodded. "Maybe. But I'm also stubborn." By the time they've reached the top floor, Ethan could barely stand. The control deck door was rusted shut. He kicked it twice. It didn't move. Shari pointed to a side panel. "There's a manual lever." Ethan pulled it with all his strength, and the door slowly opened. Inside, the room was filled with old consoles, wires, and dust. A cracked screen blinked faintly in the corner. "A power source is still running," Shari said in surprise. Ethan laid her down near the console. "Can you make it work?" "I can try," she said, already pulling wires with shaky fingers. Ethan sat beside her, watching her work. He couldn't believe how steady she looked, even with half her body broken. "You're tough," he said quietly. Shari glanced at him. "So are you." For a human, after 30 minutes of silence and sparks, the screen lit up. A faint signal icon appeared. "I think I can send a distress call," she said. "Do it," Ethan said, standing guard at the door. "Rifle?" In hand, she typed in a code using her species' military emergency format. Then added a human code as well, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. "We might get a reply within an hour," she whispered. "Let's just hope help comes before something else does," Ethan said, suddenly. The tower shook. Something had landed on the roof. Both of them froze. A heavy claw scratched across. "The metal above, the hollow one," Shari whispered in fear. "It followed us." Ethan raised his weapon and looked at her. "We hold this room," he said, "no matter what." Shari looked into his eyes and nodded. Not as an enemy anymore, but as a partner. The walls groaned again as the creature began searching. Their signal had been sent, but now? Survival would be the real test. Together, they waited. One human soldier. One broken alien warrior. Both ready to face what came next side by side. The metal roof shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling as something heavy walked across it. Shari looked up, eyes wide. "It's here." Ethan checked his weapon, just one bullet left. The hollow one was not like other creatures. It could smell blood, feel heartbeats, and sense fear. It had followed them across the wasteland, through the fog, across broken towers. Now, it was above them waiting. Hunting, the signal had been sent, but no help had arrived. If they were going to survive, they had to do it themselves. Ethan placed his hand on Shari's shoulder. "I'll lead it away," he said. "No," she whispered. "It'll kill you. It'll kill us both if we stay here," he said. Shari thought for a moment, her fingers twitching. "I have an idea," she said, "but I need 5 minutes. Do it," he said without hesitation. He moved to the doorway with his rifle ready. "I'll keep it busy." She started working with wires. Cutting parts from the old console, her fingers were numb, but her mind was sharp. She had trained in combat engineering once but never used it in real life. Today, she would, above them. A loud crash shook the building, the roof split open. As a claw punched through the steel, the hollow one roared. Dropping into the hallway outside the control room, Ethan stepped into view, aimed his rifle, and fired. The shot hit the creature in the mouth. It roared in pain, but it wasn't dead. It charged forward, smashing through walls like paper. Ethan ran, leading it away from the control room. The tower shook violently. Shari stayed focused. Sweat running down her face, she connected wires to a small fuel cell, wrapped metal strips around it. It was dangerous, unstable, but it would work. "Come on, Ethan," she whispered. "Just a little more time, downstairs." Ethan dodged another swipe, falling to the ground. He picked up a metal pipe and hit the creature across its leg. It barely noticed. But then something changed. Ten's head turned sharply. It had sensed something: energy, heat, danger, Shari's device had started to hum. The creature turned and began crawling back up. Fast, Ethan shouted, "Shari, now." She hit the final switch and slid the small device into a vent pipe leading outside. It shot upward like a flare, right into the hollow one's path. The creature grabbed it with curiosity, then it exploded. The blast shook the entire top floor. Flames lit up the sky as the hollow one screamed in pain. Ethan rushed back up, coughing from smoke. The creature was still alive, but its head and front claws were badly burned. It was weaker now, slower. Shari had one last piece of tech left: a power capacitor from the control board. "Help me up," she said. "You can't stand," Ethan replied to lift me on my arms. He grabbed her and stood her against the wall. She held the capacitor like a gun. Ethan steadied her arms. The creature burst through the door one last time. Roaring in rage, Shari screamed and pressed the trigger. A blast of blue energy shot out, hitting the beast right in the chest. Electric pulses lit up its entire body. It twisted and screamed, then finally dropped, silent. The room was quiet again. Ethan let out a long breath and dropped to his knees. Shari fell forward into his arms, completely exhausted. "It's over," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, holding her tightly. "You did it." The tower was damaged, burning in places, but they were alive. And then, sound in the distance, a ship, a rescue ship. The signal had worked. They both looked out the broken window and saw lights in the sky. A shuttle was landing near the tower. When the doors opened, a group of medics and soldiers ran toward them, both human and alien, part of a peace team sent to recover survivors. They saw Ethan and Shari holding each other, bleeding, burned, but standing tall in their own way. One medic said, "You carried her all the way here." Ethan smiled weakly. "She carried me too," as they were lifted into the rescue ship. Shari looked at Ethan. "You saved me. And I'll never forget it." He touched her hand. "We saved each other." The rescue ship flew high above the battlefield. Below them, smoke rose from the broken land. But inside, the ship was warm, clean, and quiet. Ethan lay on a medical bed, eyes closed, bandages covering his chest and arm. Beside him, Shari rested in a special recovery pod, her body still weak, but alive. Machines monitored her vitals and pumped healing fluids through her system. Days passed inside the ship as it traveled to a neutral space station. Doctors, both human and alien, worked together to treat them. Ethan's wounds were deep but not deadly. Shari's spine was badly damaged, and her legs remained motionless. One day, Ethan woke to find Shari sitting in a wheelchair, her face still pale, but her eyes bright. "You're awake," she said. Smiling gently, he tried to sit up, groaned, and smiled back. "Nice ride you got there," he joked, pointing at the chair. She laughed softly. "Better than being carried." He nodded. "I don't mind carrying you again." "I'll remember that," she said, wheeling closer. Then she placed something beside his bed, a small piece of her burned armor. "I want you to have this," she said. "It protected me for years, but that day. You were my real shield." Ethan held the armor piece in his hand. It was scratched and broken, but it meant something. "Thank you," he said, voice quiet. "But you saved me too. Remember?" They sat in silence for a while, looking out the window as stars passed by. Then Shari asked, "Do you think your people and mine will ever stop fighting?" Ethan sighed. "Maybe not all at once, but if soldiers like us start trusting each other," he said. "That's how peace begins, at the space station." They were welcomed as survivors of war. Reporters tried to talk to them. Generals asked for debriefings. But Ethan and Shari stayed quiet about what really happened. It was their story, personal and sacred. In time, Ethan recovered fully. He was offered medals, promotions, and reassignment. But he asked for something else: to stay near her. He said, until she walks again. Shari was moved to a healing center on a peaceful moon. A place full of green trees, blue skies, and quiet lakes. Ethan visited every day, helping her with recovery. He pushed her wheelchair, told her human jokes, and brought her hot tea. At first, she hated the therapy, frustrated by pain and slow progress. But Ethan never let her quit. "You're the strongest person I know," he said once. "Don't stop now." One afternoon, while birds chirped outside and the wind blew softly, Shari stood up, shaking, slow but standing. Ethan was right there, holding her arms, eyes full of tears. "You're walking," he whispered. "I promised you I would," she said, smiling. "Remember?" That night, they sat by the lake, both barefoot, watching the stars. Shari said, "You humans have strange hearts." Ethan laughed. "You aliens are just as strange." Then she looked at him seriously. "Would you come back with me to my homeworld when I'm ready?" He was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "If I do, will you promise not to crash any flying ships?" She laughed. "Deal." They watched the moonlight dance across the water. No longer enemies, no longer just Survivors, but friends, maybe something more. What began with war, pain, and silence ended with hope, laughter, and the quiet promise of a better tomorrow. All because one human soldier chose not to walk away, and one alien warrior chose to trust him. Together they rewrote what it meant to be enemies. They became something the galaxy had almost forgotten. They became proof that kindness can survive even the darkest war.